Well, good morning, one and all. We are back in studio. Welcome to Garden America. I say good morning, but perhaps you're listening to this show maybe on a pre-recorded basis, and you may say to yourself, good morning. It's 1:30 in the morning when I'm listening. But for those that are watching and listening live, it is good morning. Back with Garden America, I'm Brian Main, John Begnasco, Tiger Palafox. Wait a minute.
Wait a minute.
There's nobody sitting in John's seat.
Where'd he go?
Is he in Texas?
I could have sworn he was here just a minute ago.
I thought he was. Maybe we're just kind of used to
seeing him there.
Yeah, and maybe just a ghostly image. Now, John's in Texas, but I forgot why.
I mean, why does anybody visit Texas?
You know,
I don't know.
It's interesting. The last few times that he's been absent from the show,
yeah,
we know where he is, but we don't know why.
He's always, what is it you say? He's off on assignment?
Oh, yeah.
He's off on assignment.
You know what? That's another radio thing you've heard for years.
Yeah.
So-and-so's here, but so-and-so is off on assignment, which just means he's taking the day off. Just a nice way of – they want people to think that they're still working.
Yeah, exactly.
He might be. Does he have any sons? Anybody from his family in Texas?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's it then.
Yeah, Joe moved to Texas.
Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Joe moved to Texas. So for the rest of you listening on Biz Talk Radio and Facebook Live, welcome. It is myself, Brian Main, Tiger Palafox. We'll keep the oars in the water this morning and move this little boat, this boat we call Garden America, down the river. It is open phones. Open phones. How about that for a blast from the past? Open phones. We used to take phone calls. What I meant to say is open comments on Facebook Live.
So, your comment about keeping the oars in the water. There's a line that John wrote in this week's newsletter that I was reading through, and I thought this was very just funny. Despite John's absence, both hosts will be fully present for this Saturday's edition of Garden America Radio Show, ensuring a lively and informative session for gardening enthusiasts.
As opposed to halfway present,
yeah.
They'll be fully present.
Fully.
And that's
present.
in the newsletter, in case you do get the newsletter or want the newsletter. Just go to our website, gardenamerica.com, sign up for the newsletter. I believe everything is right there on the homepage. But so John is off today, I said open phones. What I meant to say is we don't have a guest today.
Right, we don't have a guest today. And
open comments, open subject matter, whatever.
Use the chat in Facebook to be able to kind of ask any questions. But the fun thing I thought we would do today is I pulled a bunch of news articles, some recent, some old ones, and some new ones about some gardening things that I thought were fun topics to begin to discuss, because out there in the news, and as we talk about it, even our program, we have our own opinions on things. Doesn't mean they're always 100% correct.
It's an opinion.
Maybe they don't align with your opinion on how to do something, but it is an opinion based on years of experience and what we feel should be done in order to garden correctly or ensure success. But there's also a lot of information out there on the internet on other people's opinions.
Right.
So it's always kind of fun to kind of peruse through those and see what other people are saying. And what
somebody
other people
might
think.
say, in my opinion, it's best to hold back water on this particular plant.
Yeah.
Somebody else would say, I never hold back water on that particular plant. I always water it, because there's always that little margin of error. What works well for you in a certain area or microclimate does not necessarily work in another one, even though you might be talking about the same plant. Now, there's general rules for, like, say, roses. You want to kind of back at a certain time of the year. You want to do certain things to them. But again, roses used to grow wild.
Yeah.
And some of the best roses are the ones that are left alone.
For sure. And there's pros and cons to it all. I mean, John was on last week talking about roses, and if you leave the hips on, that is a trigger for that plant to begin to rest.
Right.
Where if you don't leave the hips on, that plant never fully goes into that rest mode, which, not going to kill the plant, but next year your blossoms might be a little smaller. Mm-hmm. The plant stems could be a little weaker. And when I say could, I mean that could. Because like you say, it all depends on where you live. We might live in an area that no matter what, things rest. Or, you might live in an area where you have to force things to rest.
Right.
It all just depends.
With our weather here in Southern California, more or less we garden all year round.
Yeah.
There are certain things we still have to do, but if you don't do them, it's not going to be a big deal. And that gets back to the conversation that we're having now as far as the comments here on Facebook. Somebody brought up something, a very good point, which I noticed in the newsletter.
Uh-huh.
So Lisa says, you were T, not Tiger. Because in the newsletter, it says T and Bryan.
Does it really?
Look at the newsletter. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't catch that part. You know how your mind just probably puts in words?
It puts in, but I noticed that too. T and Bryan will be here while John is off in Texas.
Oh, that's funny.
So, yes, whatever's on your mind, you can take us in that direction. We can chit-chat about a lot here. As I started to say earlier, open phones. Back in the day, we did take phone calls. Now it's open comments here on Garden America.
Yeah. So I just scooted off of something here. Okay.
Did you lose your train of thought?
No. Did I want to do the quote of the week right now?
Sure,
Since
why
I got
not?
it open. Let me just kind of bring this down a little bit there. All right. Spring passes and one remembers one's innocence. Summer passes and one remembers one's exuberance. Autumn passes and one remembers one's reverence. By the wonderful Yoko Ono.
I saw that. Yoko Ono.
Yeah.
I wonder if she was sitting on an amplifier in the studio at Abbey Road when she came up with that.
That would be an interesting thing to kind of know when people have famous quotes. Where were they and what were they doing?
And what was the situation?
Yeah.
Because usually a quote, you've been inspired by something
Yeah.
to make that quote.
And when John and I were in England, we went to a lot of historical places, and I'm trying to think. Was it the Jungle Book? The writer of the Jungle Book, it's Kiplinger, I think is.
Somebody help us out here. We're both
Yeah.
drawing a blank on that.
But we were at, there was the Kipskate Rose, Kiplinger. I think it's Kipling or Kiplinger.
Well, wait, yes.
So, anyways, we were at this house, and it was the person who wrote, I believe it was the Jungle Book, and we're in the office where he would do his writing, and I'm just looking around the room.
Oh, wow, that's interesting, right?
Yeah, and I'm just looking around the room, and I'm looking at the artifacts in the room, and
Was there like an old typewriter there?
Oh yeah, it was all set up just as if
Right.
he had just left it, and I'm looking out the window.
Rudyard Kipling, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was looking at the window to see what was his view. And then when we walked around the grounds, I'm just looking at like the creek and the trees and everything. And I'm like, and I'm envisioning this book that he wrote and how he could have gotten all this inspiration from just where he lived and just the artifacts around him and just who he was as a person. And it's really crazy if you can connect that moment with.
It's sort of like getting into his mind.
Yeah,
a little bit.
a little bit.
The circumstances and the environment that he was in when he wrote that.
Yeah.
Lately, I've been thinking about, prior to computers, everything was done on a typewriter.
Yeah.
I mean, screenplays, movies, books.
Yep.
Tick, 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 tick on a typewriter.
And think about the trials of a typewriter, meaning, kind of like photography today, typewriters of the past too with computers. When you were a writer and you made a mistake on a typewriter, yeah, you had the little whiteout, you had the little erase, you kind of redacted.
Didn't always have whiteout either.
No, you didn't.
Do you know who invented whiteout?
No.
Michael Nesmith's mother of the Monkees. Well, Michael Nesmith was with the Monkees, and his mother invented whiteout, which pretty much set the family up for life. Even if he never played music or was with the Monkees, just inventing whiteout.
Yeah. That's so funny.
But you're right though.
But like so it was very hard. It was very challenging to write because if you made a mistake nowadays, I mean, you can delete a whole sentence just by pressing a button and start over again. It can spell check for you, and it
in
can
my
do all
business,
kinds of other things.
Back in the day with tape, so to make an edit, we actually had to use a razor blade. Mm-hmm. So you'd source in, I want to start here, and then this is where I want to end my edit. You'd cut the tape and then splice the tape together.
And you did that by gluing it or something,
No,
right?
we had a splicing tape.
What is that? Like
It's
a tape on a tape?
It's like tape, but you can take it on and off real easy. But it holds your splice together with the edit.
Oh.
So nowadays with the computers, like you say, I just punch in, punch out. If I make a mistake on my keyboard, I hit the letter Z, and it takes me back to where I was before I created that recording. So if I make a mistake on a recording or an edit, I just hit Z, goes back, I start again.
Yeah.
You know.
Exactly. It's that easy to correct your errors. which kind of brings me to the first, I think, topic.
And we've got about 50 seconds.
Okay,
before the break.
I'll just kind of I'll kind of lead with it, and it's the there's an article about what not to prune in the winter. People think they should prune it, but what they shouldn't really be pruning. So that's what we'll come back to the commercial with. Yes.
Okay, and we'll try to catch up on some of the questions too, Tiger, during our very quick break. We got to come. Somebody asked if the studio was remodeled. No, I just think they're looking at that new camera angle that we've got up above on top of one of the speakers. So break time. John is off in Texas. I'm Bryan Main. Tiger Palafox, or better known as T this week in the newsletter. We're going to take a break. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. Stay with us. This is Garden America. Okay, we are back. Those on Biz Talk Radio listening to us, those on Facebook Live watching us, welcome to the show. Tiger is with me, Bryan Main. John is with his son in Texas. That's what's going on. We got an empty chair next to Tiger there to his left. Yeah. So if you're in the neighborhood, want to drop by and want to talk gardening, come on in. We'll set you up with headphones and a microphone, and you're off and running.
Exactly. So before the break, I was saying we're going to be talking about some different articles today, and
pruning in the wintertime.
Pruning in the wintertime. And we all know, the deciduous pruning things, like when things go dormant, it's a good time to prune. Right after things bloom that are going to go dormant in the wintertime, it's a good time to bloom. Or good time to prune. So we talked about roses.
A good time to bloom.
Yeah, it's not a good time to bloom in the wintertime. But things to avoid pruning right now. One is a plant that we don't have here in Southern California, is rhododendrons.
Don't prune them.
Yeah, don't prune them in the wintertime because they bloom on old wood. And that's a thing that people need to know.
What does that term mean? People probably don't even know what that term means.
Exactly. And it's a very commonly used term.
Yeah, we throw it around like everybody knows what it is.
Yeah. And so what it means, though, is that when plants get cut back and that new stems, all that new growth comes out, some plants flower off of that new growth, which is fine. You do a heavy cutback, and then the new stems, the new tips come out, and then they begin to flower. Well, some plants don't bloom off of that. They bloom off of the stems that have been left.
That have been there.
For a year or longer. And so what that means, though, is that if you do a harsh prune back, that plant's going to grow back just wonderfully next year, but you're not going to get any flowers on it. So you have to do what we call like a lacing pruning, which is just a thinning of the plant so that gives it room to grow next year. And don't prune it back so hard, which means not so small, so that way you can allow it to still have some flowers.
Now, what about this? Maybe this is exactly what you just said, but let's say you have you got the old wood, you've got new growth, and you said you'd use the term lacing.
Yeah.
What about if you took some of the new growth and just cut it back a little bit? Is that the same as lacing? In other words, I'm not going to cut everything off,
right?
But I'm going to leave a little bit of the new.
Correct.
Is that the same as lacing?
It's not the same as lacing. Lacing is more like the inner parts of the plant.
Okay.
The stems that are like on the inner. What you're talking about is the tip growth, and that's what I'm saying is you can trim it back a little bit,
right?
But you don't want to trim it back too far because then you're not leaving enough old wood for it to bloom or fruit or grow onto.
Okay, the great explanation.
Yeah. So rhododendrons, and in that same group of plants, the one that we can grow here in Southern California is azaleas, and they again don't. They do bloom on old wood, so you don't cut them back very hard. Now, azaleas do keep their foliage a lot better than rhododendrons, so it's kind of hard to sometimes guess when you're pruning those. But you do usually prune them kind of right now in the fall and the winter, and then that get them ready for next spring, because a lot of times the azaleas bloom in the spring. If you think about like the cherry blossoms, the Japanese gardens, those are all like azaleas there, and that's when you see the big blooms on them. And so you can't prune them right before the spring because they won't bloom, and if you prune them too hard, they won't bloom a lot. And then another plant that's listed here is forsythia, and this grouping of plants, again, they will take a harsh prune back, but you do still need to leave some foliage on there for them to be able to bloom. So that was just something that I saw was like, plants avoiding pruning. And then, when we're talking about azaleas and rhododendrons, people might think of camellias. Remember that those plants are going to begin to bloom now. Those are winter bloomers. And so you definitely don't want to be pruning those now because you'll be almost cutting off all the flowers that you're expecting to see in the next month or two.
Let's go back to, you talked about, they bloom on old wood, okay?
Yeah.
Now it's time, you do want to cut back. And my question to you was, can you still leave a little bit of the new growth and just cut back a little bit? And you said yes.
Yes.
So does that mean next year that new growth that I left now becomes second-year old wood?
Growth. Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you're going to get more blooms.
Now the plant is getting bigger and bigger each year in terms of where it's going to bloom.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's why some people, you mentioned roses earlier with some roses that you just leave alone.
Just leave alone.
And they grow. And that's why sometimes those plants bloom the best is because people haven't been cutting them back. And it's just a lot of old wood that allows for those flowers. And they could be some of the ones that bloom the best because they're just full of old wood.
Yeah,
now that plant might not look very good in the spring or in the winter because it looks old and ratty and very dense. But when it is in bloom, it looks magical. So,
boy, my phone keeps going off here for different reasons. Okay, how are we now? Have you covered your list, or do we have more?
No, we've got more. We got fun stuff. I want to check to see if there was anything in the chat though, real quick, because without John here, I'm all over the place. So, got to make sure we answer all the questions that people may have. Wow, there's already 31 comments.
Yeah, right off the bat, people even commenting on when you talked about the
mimeograph fluid and carbon paper. People are still on the
typewriter. On the typewriter and Kipling's office.
Yeah. I like Carla says the whole old wood thing and new wood thing makes me nervous. Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
So here's what you do. Take a plant that you may have a few of and just start with one of them until you gain your confidence.
Yeah. And then Lenora commented pomegranates only in second year wood also. Yeah, and pomegranates. Have you ever seen like a real well-grown pomegranate and the size that the fruit gets? Ryan?
Yeah, exactly. Sure.
What size? Like what size have you seen a pomegranate?
Maybe the size of an orange?
Oh my goodness, no. I've seen pomegranates the size of your head.
What?
Massive. Yeah, we don't see those a lot here because a lot of times they ship them other places because there's a better value other places than here because they grow so easily. But they can get the size of your head. They're massive. Pomegranates can get massive.
And what would be the growing conditions for one to become that size?
So they grow a lot in the Central Valley of California, just like that.
So the weather?
So it's the, hot summers, cold winters, good amounts of water, through the winter. So that way the roots are set. And then, pomegranates are dry plants in general.
Right.
They grow in a lot of very arid areas. So it's not like they need a lot of water, but in order to produce that fruit, they do require more water than what maybe nature gives it. But just that hot summer is what it loves.
Okay.
So, yeah. But yeah, they grow massive. It's just you don't ever see them.
No.
Like go to a farmer's market during, time for pomegranate, which is probably like, we're probably getting to the end of it, seeing them in farmers markets, but you'll see them in farmers markets. Really big pomegranates, pretty cool. How do you know? How do I know if my pomegranate is ornamental? So there are a few varieties of ornamental pomegranates, and I mean, how do you know aside from the fruit not being really great tasting or edible?
Take a break.
Okay.
Now, this is a question on our comments.
Yeah.
This is from Lisa, right?
Leanne.
I'm sorry.
Or Lila.
No, Lisa.
Lisa has one?
Yeah. No, Lisa asked that question. How do I know if my pomegranate is ornamental?
Oh, okay. Lisa.
Yeah, we're going to catch up on your questions here on the Garden America. So do stay with us. I'm Bryan Main. John is in Texas. Tiger Palafox. We're doing it solo today. Tiger, myself, keep those comments coming on Facebook. Welcome to those on Biz Talk Radio. Going to take a break for you, Biz Talk Radio, back after these messages. All righty, back here on Garden America, broadcasting from the iHeart Media and Entertainment Studios from San Diego, California, right here in Southern California. Welcome, Bryan Main, John Bagnasco, Texas. Tiger Palafox is with me. And we have more a list. I guess the list keeps going as far as what not to cut back this time of year. And again, comments that you keep looking at,
Yeah.
right?
No, we're on pomegranates right now.
Okay, we're going to stick with
So
pomegranates
Lisa
right now.
asked, how do I know if my pomegranate is ornamental? So, as far as how do you know whether a pomegranate is ornamental is, if it fruits, usually the ornamental varieties get a very small fruit. And when I say small, I'm talking like the size of like a ping pong ball fruit, where like we just talked about,
Okay.
I've seen pomegranates fruit the size of your head. So, that's one way. The other way is size. The ornamental pomegranates are usually grown to be more of a compact shrub. To put this in another plant perspective is there's the olive trees, and then there's ornamental olives. There's one called Little Ollie olive, and it's a very compact small shrub. It gets the same foliage of an olive, it gets the same look of an olive, but it's grown to be a compact shrub, and it's just an ornamental olive. So pomegranates, the same kind of thing. They're more just small bushes, very dense, where a pomegranate that produces fruit usually is a large bush or large multi-trunk tree that you'll see growing. So otherwise, the foliage and the stems, they look very similar, so it's hard to tell the difference. Let's see then. And Ed Livo, our friend, also commented that there's special trellising for the large size pomegranates. And that is true because they get so heavy that it's kind of like if you were to trellis up a large fruit like a cantaloupe or watermelon, you got to support it as well, because otherwise it'll just pull the branch down. And Millie has a new question. How about cutting back fuchsias now? Oh, fuchsias are one of my favorite shade plants. They look so pretty, the dangling candelabra flowers. And again, they're kind of like one of those plants that you can't just cut back hard and then expect it to regrow. Number one, they don't always respond well to that. Number two, if you cut it back now, they're not going to regrow for months and months and months, which might cause rot. So usually what you're going to want to do, Millie, is after they're done blooming, do a lot of the little trimming, deadheading, some of that pruning in there on the fuchsia, but leave it through the winter time, because you kind of leave it, it'll overwinter okay, and then do some lacing pruning as it comes out of the winter, depending on where you're at, maybe March or April, and then you'll have a better growth with your fuchsia at that time. But if you cut it back now, there's a good chance that it'll just like overwinter and almost die if it rots out, because it doesn't grow much in the wintertime. So watch out with that. And Carla, we are constantly cutting back our pomegranate. If we don't, because it becomes a monster. So if we don't get it, we don't get as much fruit. Oh well, we can't eat that many anyways. And that is the other thing.
That's what happens, right?
With there's a lot of fruits out there. I mean, lemons. People say, "Oh, I want a lemon tree. I want this tree. I want that tree." And I'm like, okay, well, number one, with the lemon, you're going to get so much fruit that, you've got to really have a good group of friends that you can share it with, or put a box out there for your neighbors, because you're going to get so much. And no matter how hard you prune it back, you're still going to get more lemons than what you need on it. And so, this ideal pruning technique, is more for the people that are trying to really get good production, and they're going to use it. Because if you're just trying to enjoy an apricot tree, for example, that also produces a lot, you don't need to be too critical of the pruning, because you're going to get a lot of apricots no matter what, almost to the point where you can't even eat them all.
Right.
So even if you don't prune correctly, you're still going to be fine. But if you're trying to produce apricots and you really want a lot, then obviously you want to look at the correct timing of the pruning, a lot of the correct techniques, just to, again, like yield the most amount of fruit for that tree.
Okay, Veronica, when is the best time to lace out my semi-dwarf apricot blackjack fig?
Oh, so we're just talking about the apricot and fig. So, a lot of times, we talked about this a little while ago, a lot of times people will say, oh, January and February, when the tree goes completely dormant, is the best time to do that. And we're kind of leaning more towards now the direction of just after it's done fruiting. So you don't have to wait until January and February when it's fully dormant, but you could do that maybe at the end of its fruiting cycle, which for a lot of that stuff is going to be now. Get in there, start doing some of the pruning, start doing some of the lacing, let it then go dormant over winter, and then let it come back in the next spring, because you're giving it the most amount of time to recoup. See, if you wait till February to prune when it's fully dormant, then, it's got to start growing from February, where if you do it now, in kind of our more mild climates, if you do it now, you actually are going to get another few months of growth before the spring flowering cycle and season. So therefore, you're going to get maybe a little bit better growth and production off of it. And so that goes for the apricot and the fig. I will say, though, that the figs can handle a bit more harsh prune back than the apricot, because it's really hard to kill a fig. And again, back to the production, like there's a ton of fruit on figs. On the apricot, though, really work hard on removing all of the dead wood, because they accumulate a lot of dead wood over the season. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of dead branches, a lot of inner growth, branches rubbing up against each other, which are going to cause wounds in the tree and things like that. Focus more on that for the apricot.
Okay.
Wow.
I want to make sure
my head is about to explode.
Exactly. Make sure we're caught up. Let's go back and work our way down again.
Okay. And repotting fuchsias now. Yeah, Carla mentioned repotting fuchsias, and you can repot them now. Like I said, they're not going to grow a lot in the next few months. So you just don't want to do anything too drastic to them.
I think Rick had a question. If you're down to Rick.
Okay, Rick. We are getting fall leaf drop now. Instead of raking and cleaning up all the leaves, do some plants benefit from leaves being in the beds or around the base of the trees, used as mulch? It's funny that, Rick, you mentioned that, because one of the articles that I was reading through for this week's show was, it's getting fall, and there's places all around the country
leaves
that
just fall everywhere.
Leaves are just falling. And I was thinking about how in those really natural areas that the leaves just fall in the mountains and everything, and that debris just builds up, and that soil must be such loamy, rich soil. And so as far as leaves falling, leave them on the ground. They are a great source of mulch. So yes, I mean, you leave it, it mulches, it breaks down, it turns into soil. There's a lot of really good benefits to mulch, leaf mulch, in the ground. It keeps weeds at control. It keeps the moisture in the ground. Mm-hmm. You're adding, more nitrogen. You're adding all kinds of other benefits into the ground, creating that environment for earthworms and mycorrhiza and all kinds of other stuff. The one thing that people say why you don't leave leaves down on the ground, number one is disease. So, like for instance, rust on roses, rust, mildew, black spot. When you let that foliage go into the ground, you can perpetuate the problem. So meaning, you're putting those diseases into the ground, you're putting it into the plant again, and then the next year there's more black spot, there's more rust, there's more mildew issues with the plants. So, you got to watch out for that. If there's a lot of disease on your tree or your shrub that's losing leaves, you might want to rake that up and kind of take it off site, so that way you don't perpetuate the problem. The other thing is if you build up mulch around the base of the plant, you can cause a root rot issue. But that more has to do with you putting that mulch next to the base of this trunk or the stem, because a lot of times when leaves fall, they fall away from the tree. They fall on the outside of the tree itself or the bush. They don't fall right at the base.
You talked about the fact that it causes root rot, but you also said before that by leaving the leaves on there, you're keeping moisture in the ground.
Yeah.
So now this is what we're talking about. That moisture then creates the root rot. Is that right?
That moisture creates the root rot. It doesn't allow for it to breathe. But that usually happens only if people rake the leaves up next to the base of the tree.
Right.
It doesn't really happen in nature because, like I say, leaves fall away from the tree and don't form a big pile at the base of the tree. Right. So, that's what you kind of have to avoid there. And then, the other thing is just the look. So,
that's the first thing. Aesthetically, people go, it doesn't look good.
They don't like the way it looks.
Is this the same thing we're talking about when you mow your lawn? and the argument to either leave the clippings on the lawn or rake them up.
Yeah. Yeah, because if you don't rake them up, you might see a bit of that clippings in the lawn, and you're like,
Right.
oh, that doesn't look good. But at the same time, it's breaking back down into the soil, and, it's keeping the lawn green.
It is break time again. See how fast this show goes?
Jeez,
We are just
whizzing.
This train is moving fast this morning. We're going to take a break for Biz Talk Radio. Back even quicker after the break here on Facebook Live. Thank you to Biz Talk Radio. Thank you to Fertilome, our major sponsor. Check them out, Fertilome. Again, and we'll have somebody from Fertilome on in the next month or so. I would imagine, Tiger, it'll be time to talk about Fertilome and all their great products. A major sponsor here on Garden America. Back after these messages on Biz Talk Radio. Stay with us. Okay, just like that, we are back. And if you are tuned in on Biz Talk Radio, as a reminder, this is the final segment of hour number 1. A quick hour, right? We come back at 6 minutes after. Hopefully your market carries us on Biz Talk Radio for hour number 2 as well. The rest of us on Facebook Live, here we are as Tiger catches up on some of the questions and comments.
I just want to say good morning to Alex, also who just joined the show and said
that's
good morning to us. And I like Alex's little emojis, and he's got she's got a beautiful hibiscus right there. Yeah, that's really nice. Good morning, Alex. But back to this kind of like mulch thing. Another article was somebody was asking on an online chat about their landscaper, said that they didn't want to put down weed barrier under the mulch of their beds because they didn't agree with the way that the weed barrier worked, and it doesn't really keep out weeds. And they wanted to know, was this the landscaper just trying to pull one over on them and skip out on the job, or did this have some truth to it?
So you're talking about a weed barrier.
Yeah, like a weed cloth, like a weed fabric.
And then you've
on
got the
top.
leaves falling on top of that.
Well, but you could put mulch on top, or you can put rocks on top of it, for a soil covering in your garden. And I will say that I address this issue a lot because I do not agree with putting weed barrier down either. I'm an advocate for leaving the soil because when you put down the rocks or the mulch on top, number one, with the mulch, it begins to do what you want the mulch to do. It integrates with the soil, and it begins to break down and amend the soil. You get the benefits of it, and it creates that connection with the soil so it doesn't just drift and move freely. Where weed barrier, it keeps out weeds initially, but in the long term, it ends up getting torn. It comes up. It looks bad.
Somebody before I moved in, and I moved in back in 2008. There's an area right under the stairs. You can see remnants of weed barriers.
Yeah.
But let me ask you this: weed barrier, mulch. What we're talking about. When you put a weed barrier down, can you suffocate the soil?
Yeah. So that is another thing that begins to happen is the weed barrier actually begins to prevent that soil life, right? Because air, water,
right,
all of those things that life needs,
right.
And we're talking bugs and earthworms and funguses and bacteria down underneath there. That weed barrier begins to create an environment that is not conducive to that.
John Clements agrees. No weed cloth.
Yeah.
You know what? Just take the time to go out and maintain your weeds.
And that's what the article ends up coming down. They tell the people,
it's part of gardening.
Just go out and start weeding. It's therapeutic.
Right.
You'll enjoy it. You'll see results much quicker.
Just don't wait till the weeds are out of control.
That's the thing,
Start
right?
right away.
Just make it your weekly little 15-minute job or 20-minute job or whatever it is to get out there and pull weeds, and in no time you'll see the weeds go away. And then we recently had a person on the show, Greg Rubin, who talked about like a lot of native plants will actually change the soil around them to prevent weeds from growing in the future. And a lot of plants are like that, where if the other plants become established, weeds don't grow around them because the other plants don't allow them to grow. It's when you kind of leave those open space areas and unmanaged areas, or you let weeds go to seed and constantly repopulate, then you're going to have that problem. And, and then also at the end of the day, it just is something that, it's inevitable. Any gardener is going to, John Clements works at, the San Diego Botanical Gardens, and, he's got army of people.
Oh yeah,
up there
that's all they
working.
do. I'll bet, right?
And I'm sure there's
Weed patrol.
I'm sure there's probably 20 people that 8 hours a day they're just out there weeding, and it's inevitable. But it's also part of the ecosystem. I mean, every weed does add a little bit of something, whether it's changing a soil makeup or adding a little bit of nutrients or something as well that. There's could be some benefit to just leaving it and letting it be. And it also acts as a ground covering if in the wintertime, as we get into the rainy season, if you remove all the weeds, that's when you could have erosion or other problems that, that they're holding the hillsides together. So you got to be careful with that.
Okay, let's see. Let's go back up. I think Tanya has a question or a comment here. Are you there?
I'm not there. Can you pull it up or no?
Well, she says she tried weed barrier. The weed seeds rooted and grew through. Just what we're talking about.
Exactly.
So to weed the area since, they would not, basically agreeing with what we said. Eventually, they'll find a way.
And if you buy the weed cloth, which I definitely recommend over the weed plastic material, the roots will root into the cloth. and so they're even harder to pull than if they were just in the ground.
Here's an analogy. How many people have actually seen small weeds go through sidewalks?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've seen them grow out of rocks.
So
just out of a piece of
what
rock.
Does that say about a little cloth?
Yeah.
The weeds are like, what is this cloth that you put down here?
Yeah.
Silly humans.
You give us a little extra grip to hold on to here.
And then Carla is right under that.
Yeah, she wrote, where would she at? I have a question come up this week about Thai and cordyline plants. I read they are the same thing, but I always think of Thai plants as tropical and cordylines is more of a desert drought plant. Yeah, isn't that fun?
Right, yeah, right. Yeah.
Because she's so right. She's so right in so many ways. It's funny that cordyline and Thai plants can be seen in both tropical and desertscape landscapes. Cordyline red sensation, you see it a lot of times used in very dry, arid landscapes with cactus and succulents and DG and rock. And it has that red burgundy foliage, and it's just that vertical, almost sword-like foliage on there. But then you look at, cordylines, electric pink and some of the green varieties, and you'll see them in tropical landscapes with palms and hibiscus and plumerias and all that kind of stuff. And you like, wait, how does this same plant survive in dry areas and also in wet areas? And there's a lot of plants like this. There's a California native plant called a mimulus, a monkey flower. And, orange and yellow and red flowers. And some of them, do you want to take a break right now?
Yeah, we should take a break.
Okay, we'll take a break. I'll continue chatting about mimulus when we come back.
Yeah, don't be like John when you forget.
No, I won't.
Okay. It is break time. In fact, it is news, top of the hour news for our friends on Biz Talk Radio. And again, hopefully your market carries our second hour because we come back at 6 minutes after. The rest of you on Facebook Live, great questions, great comments. It's going to be a very short break, so do stay with us. John is in Texas. I'm Bryan, Maine. Tiger Palafox. Thank you for joining us on your weekend. We are Garden America. Hey, just like that, we are back. Welcome to hour number 2 if you're tuned in on Biz Talk Radio. It is one continuous show on Facebook Live. It's just us, the guys. Your garden buddies, -1. John is in Texas. I'm Bryan, Maine. Tiger Palafox. And I know for a fact that Tiger remembered his train of thought before the break in the news break on Biz Talk Radio.
Yeah, I did. We were talking about cordylines.
Yes.
Because
Carla. Carla started this.
Exactly, because she sees them as tropicals and then you see them as desert plants. And, I had brought up the California native mimulus, monkey flower. And there's this is in the same space, meaning this is Southern California, small environment. You have mimulus that require a bog-like situation.
Oh, Louisiana. We're talking down south, that environment.
We're talking never drying out, next to water, just needs to have water
all the
every
time.
Day, all day. And then you can have the mimulus that is growing on the hillside, full exposure, hot sun, and only gets our average of 10 inches of rainfall a year, surviving just fine. Same plant, they're both mimulus, but two completely different areas and in the same spot. We're not even talking separate continents. We're taking the same environment, and that's kind of like the cordyline. And cordyline is in the also asparagus family, Dracaena, all of that whole kind of like grouping where you have a wide variety. And we're talking continental separations now with the Thai plant and cordyline because, we're Pacific Islands and Asia and, then also in the Mediterranean. So, it's one of those fun plants that can lean towards multiple directions. And it just really comes down to, where it's from and why it grows the way it is. But, yes, I don't know how to explain the answer to that more than that. You're talking about, to some degree, two separate plants, but they are the same plant. They are cordyline, but where one is native to is very different from where the other is native to, and that's why they grow in different environments and with different growth habits. So
I don't know that there was a real answer there.
Yeah.
More of an explanation of the variations of what is, what could be, and what might be.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. They were the
sense.
same thing, but I always think of Thai plants as a tropical, and
Right.
a cordyline is more of a desert. And yes,
All the above?
you are correct.
All of the above, is that right?
But they still are the same plant. Yes, yeah. But you're right. Like, she couldn't take her cordyline fruticosa and grow it into the desert. That would not work.
Gotcha.
Just like she couldn't take her cordyline red sensation and throw it into a tropical jungle, and because again, it would rot out, and that would not work as well.
Okay, after Carla, what do we have?
I like Kevin. I made effort to reinforce this comment. I look at weeding as a therapy and a healthy activity until my back goes out.
Kevin, I share the back problem with you, and it's one of those things where you feel good 1 minute, and pretty soon, boom, back problems. I get it, Kevin. I'm right there with you.
This is another thing. So, this is kind of like to the idea of what we talked about in the beginning of the show, that we have our own opinions on things, and
Sure.
other people might not share these opinions. But we've talked about this a number of times. And somebody wrote, crabgrass in your raised beds, how to remove Bermuda grass from beds with other plants intermixed. So Bermuda grass, crabgrass, tuberous root grass issues growing in amongst your plants.
Without pulling out what you want to remain there.
Without pulling out what you want to
Right.
remain there, and with being effective, because sometimes even pulling it out, you're leaving those little darned roots in there, and then they just grow back.
Go right back. Sure.
So number one, there are herbicides that are designed to kill grasses in plant beds. Some that are even designed to kill grasses in ice plant as well. There was a product called Killer on the market,
But
for a long
obviously
time.
not kill what it is you're trying to grow.
Exactly.
Right, okay.
So,
So
it all has
they're
to do with
determinate.
it all has to do with the cells of the plants, and
Right.
how grasses grow versus how plants grow, and that's why you can apply it on the plant and not have it affect, and it only affects the grass. So there are herbicides. You can get down there and pull like we're talking about, but that's a challenge. So it's a little bit more about being selective in the products you're using to kill those grasses. Now, I will say with things like Bermuda grass, I'm an advocate for the Roundup products, the glyphosate, because it kills through the root. It doesn't affect the surrounding plants as long as you don't apply it to the foliage of the other plants. So it's not like it gets into the soil and kills your plants from the roots, but it's effective through the whole plant, which Bermuda grass, which will kill the whole Bermuda grass. So if you can be very specific on how you spray it, it's a great tool to use.
Target the area and do not use it when it's windy.
Yes.
Just
exactly.
be careful. You want to wear gloves? Fine. You want to wear a mask? Fine.
Great.
Want to cover your eyes? Fine.
Yes.
Just be very deliberate on where you're pointing the bottle or whatever you're using, and don't get it all over the place. That's where people get in trouble.
Exactly. Or stepping on the area after you've sprayed it, and now
Right.
you step across your lawn.
There you go.
You're gonna have footprints on
Yeah.
your lawn. Okay, so another hot topic that I saw in the news thread this week, and we'll continue getting to the questions.
Sure,
but I
yeah.
did wanna-
Hang in there. And if by chance we forget, go ahead and post your question again, so we'll keep
Yeah.
on following down the comment line.
But because we're getting into the time of year where your basil is beginning to bloom, and we call it bolt where basil, cilantro, some of the herb plants begin to flower, and we call that bolting. And people say, oh, well, you cut them and then you'll get more foliage, you get more growth down the road. Prevent your plants from bolting. And also it changes the flavor of the plants. And that is true. So when things like basil, cilantro, lettuces begin to flower, it's going to change the flavor of your leafy products. It's going to also stop producing your leafy products because it's in a different kind of mindset. It's in a reproduction mindset now, not into the foliage growing. So if you prevent things from bolting, you can extend the life of the plants. But now I will say, if the flowers are already opening, you're too late.
Yeah.
You need to cut those when they're budded up, not when they're flowering. If the flowers already opened up, the plant's already too late. But the argument was to let them bolt, because then you get seeds, which, they're like, oh, free seeds, free new plants for next year. And that is true too. If you do let your flowers go to seed, you can have lettuce, you can have basil, you can have cilantro, for the next season, already sow itself into the ground, or you can collect those seeds and then have them for next year. I think, that's it's tough sometimes. It's it's tough to let them go that long. They don't look pretty.
Yeah.
The plants don't look good. You have to be okay with letting your garden look unkept for a while if you want it to go to that level of reseeding. But it's a great way to have free plants for the next season. Yeah, so you can do that too.
Put up with a little raggedy look for a while.
Exactly. Kind of like the rose hips, like John was saying.
Yeah.
You might like the way it looks, but it'll benefit in the long run. All right. Let's see. I gotta close and open it to see if there's more questions. I feel like it says 31 comments, but I feel like there's more. Oh, 66. How did that just happen?
Okay, raise your hand if you had a question or comment we didn't address.
Yeah.
There should be a little raise your hand emoji.
I like Kevin's comment of, how come we never see diconda grass anywhere anymore? I remember from the 50s and 60s. And that's one of those fads, Kevin. That's one of those things that was a fad for a period of time. We don't see it because it wasn't something that people really gravitated towards. It wasn't as good of a product as it was advertised to do at the same time as like a grass alternative. It's not bad, but it just wasn't, would you rather have a fescue lawn, or would you rather have a dichondra lawn?
Fescue.
More people say fescue.
Yeah, sure.
So it's just what happened.
Yeah, these comments are coming in quickly here.
Yeah. There was another one where, raccoons tore up our new lawn. This is from Tanya. Probably looking for grubs. My gardener wanted to use a product that kills all insects. I'm uncomfortable with that for a few reasons. Question: is there a grub-specific only product you recommend? So yes, Tanya.
Yeah, you can just bring some skunks in and turn the skunks loose. They'll dig for the grubs.
Yeah. So it's funny, Tanya, too, and I don't know if people have heard these kind of stories before, but we have laid new lawns for people, like big areas, like 1,000 square foot areas. Laid it, watered it in, got it all situated. The next day, people call us up and said, hey, why didn't you roll out the turf on my lawn? Because maybe they weren't home when we left. Or
This is opposed to like seeding grass?
So it's laying out pieces of sod.
Yeah, I got you. Okay.
And we show up, and all the pieces of sod are perfectly rolled back up.
We got to take a quick break.
Oh, my goodness.
This is going to be
now?
Good. I know.
Cliffhanger.
In fact, I'm late. This is for Biz Talk Radio to stay on time. We're going to take a break for Biz Talk Radio, back after these messages, except on Facebook Live, and more of Tiger's story about sod and rolling it out here on Garden America. Okay, we have returned. Those on Biz Talk Radio, thank you for hanging in there, and thank you for supporting our many sponsors on the Biz Talk Radio. Big shout out to Fertilome. Okay, so you've laid the sod out, and you've unrolled it, and the next day they call you back and say, why didn't you finish rolling out the sod?
Exactly.
To which you say,
I did finish. I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, Tiger, I'm looking at it right, and I'm looking out my window here, and the sod is rolled up.
Exactly. And then I show up. We come to find out raccoons visited that night, rolled up all the pieces of sod, and then started digging around looking for grubs and other little critters in the soil. But they just rolled up all the pieces of sod.
Would that not be a fun video to watch?
Oh, my goodness, right?
So in the middle of the night, they roll the sod back looking for grubs as opposed to digging.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just like, "Oh, this is nice. I don't have to, dig through this grass here. I can just roll this piece up and I get right down into the ground." So, yeah, so
then what do you do?
Right. So Tanya's, I think it was Tanya's question was
yes, it was Tanya.
Killing the grubs but not other insects. And there are products out there, Tanya, that will kill just grubs. I will say, though, that you have to be careful because a lot of products that kill grubs you can't use in edible.
Right, if you're growing edibles.
Because a lot of the chemicals are not something that you would want to grow in.
You don't want to ingest it.
Sorry, you don't want to ingest the product that you use for killing grubs. So there's if you go to fertilome.com, they have a lot of different products depending on where you are as far as what grubs. Their grub-free zone product. They have a natural guard grub control product. But yes, there are a lot of products that are very grub specific. And you can get as specific to the region to make sure you're not killing all the other stuff. Because, a lot of the all-encompassing killer products, you don't want to kill earthworms and, some of the other beneficial insects in your ground just to get rid of the grubs.
So there's every good reason why you just don't want to be so indiscriminate that you're killing everything.
Yes.
You want to only target what it is where the problem is.
Yes, exactly. So fertilome.com will show you the list of the different products. And
by the way, if you want to know how to spell Fertilome, it's right there in your video.
Yeah.
Top right-hand portion of your screen.
Yep.
Fertilome. There you go. That's how you spell it. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. For those wondering, how do you spell it?
But and then there's also some beneficial insects. If you don't mind waiting, this is not going to be an instant thing. Because, the beneficial insects need to, take hold to where they're at. But as far as like a long term, there are some beneficial insects that you can incorporate into your soil that will kill grubs as well. So
that's good. That's almost like hiring decollete snails.
It is. It's the same kind of basic thing that, you hire the hire
them.
Do you put them on payroll?
Oh, yeah.
They got little 401ks and pensions.
It's a monthly contract. After the first month, I want to see how effective they are. And then we put them on for another month. And then they'll come back and tell me, I think we're good for a while.
Yeah.
And I just pay off the contract and wait till next year.
And then
That's how that works.
Call them back up.
Call them back up as needed.
But yeah, so, the grubs in the ground are a big problem when it comes to, you mentioned skunks, raccoons. A lot of things will dig through your ground looking for grubs because they are a very juicy treat.
Have you anybody ever seen the claws on a skunk?
Oh, goodness.
They're huge.
Yes.
And that's for digging, and that's exactly what they do. Used to live out in Santee, and early in the morning we would see skunks digging through the lawn looking for grubs. So there you have it. I love the rolled up story with the raccoon, though.
I know, that's crazy, right?
Where are we now? Are we caught up with just about everything? And if not, let us know.
Let me see here. I have skunks too. Is it okay? It's okay to plant cilantro seeds now. It's okay. Lenore asked this, and I believe Lenore's in Huntington Beach. Am I correct, Brian? Do you remember?
No. Carla's in Huntington Beach.
Oh, okay.
Lenore's in Canyon Country, I believe.
Oh, so plant cilantro seeds now. Now, I will say cilantro grows great in cool weather. Because it doesn't bolt like we were talking about as quickly in cool weather as it does in hot weather. So depending on where you're at, Lenore, it just can't get too cold. Cilantro is like basil, where it doesn't like frigid temperatures. So depending on where you're at, and
so what? And I'm sure it gets cold where she is.
Yeah, I'm sure it does.
What's safe? Anything below 40? Or would 40 be the cutoff?
No, it's got to be even warmer than that. You got to be above 50.
Okay.
Yeah. And
So she
and
would
but-
need to create an environment for that.
But I
if
was
she
going to
wants
say, like a windowsill,
Yeah.
you can grow cilantro. A back patio, you can grow cilantro, and basil, and all those herbs year round. And like I say, they like the cooler weather because the hot weather is what makes them bloom, and they're tough to keep watered. But you and I were talking before the show. You watered what, once this week?
Once this last week, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And before you were watering 3 to 4 times when it was hot. Well, same kind of thing with your herbs that you grow through the wintertime. They'll grow. They like the sunlight. They don't mind the cool weather. You just can't let them get freezing cold because they will die. Like when it gets freezing cold. Are John and Bonnie? Are there any biological critters that go after grubs in the ground? Yes. Tip Top Biocontrol is the company. If you go to their website, they will list their grub killing products. I believe there's some nematodes and some other things that kill grubs. But like I say, it's a long-term thing.
Right.
This is not something, for someone that just laid out grass and is trying to keep these, raccoons and skunks out of there. You're going to need to use a product that's killing the grubs right away, so that way they stop. But down the road, you can start to use beneficials. So if you look at your grub killing package and say it lasts for 30 days, 60 days, or whatever it is, at the end of that, you can then start to incorporate those beneficials. So for the next year, you can, start to, benefit from the beneficials. I will say then people will say, oh, well, Tiger, but if there's nothing to eat, where will the beneficials grow? You're right. And if there's no grubs in the soil after you use your chemical products, they're not going to have anything to eat. So they might go away. They might disappear. But, if you live in an area where grubs are inevitable, they'll come back after that period of time. And then you'll use beneficials from there on out. And then you don't have to use the chemicals down the road. So just be cautious of that.
We got about a minute to go.
For this section?
For this segment, which means we have 2 more segments. Very, very quick show. My goodness.
Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody that's joining us. That's what I thought. I can put them in a patio with a roof. Yeah,
right,
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like the cilantro. She was talking about putting it on the patio.
That's good. Okay, we'll take a break right now. And again, for Biz Talk Radio and Facebook Live, we have 2 more segments. The next segment is our longer segment, so plenty of time to get your questions, your comments in as we continue rolling through this weekend. John is in Texas. I'm Bryan Main, Tiger Palafox. We're going to take a break for Biz Talk Radio. Back after these messages. And again, a big thank you to our major sponsor, Fertilome. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live, back after this. Hey, just like that, we are back. What a quick break. Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. It's Bryan and Tiger on your weekend, or perhaps you're watching the pre-recorded show on our YouTube channel. Go to Garden America Radio Show on YouTube later on this afternoon. This show will be uploaded, and all the previous shows also on our YouTube platform. Also, gardenamerica.com. If you could just visit us once a day, like us on Facebook, like what we're doing on our Facebook page, and, of course, our website, gardenamerica.com. That really helps the show.
All right. So this is a great topic that Carla asked, and she said, Veronica, can Roundup be used in raised bed for my vegetables? So first off, Roundup is they changed their formulation, and we talked about this with Greg Rubin also when he was on the show. They changed their formulation to combat the whole glyphosate thing. And the product that they changed to is actually more harmful to the overall soil than glyphosate was. So I'm going to say no, you should not use Roundup specifically in your raised beds.
Is it because we're talking edibles?
They changed the recipe in the edibles, and
right.
Your soil is going to get affected by it, and the roots are going to get affected by it, and I would not recommend that. Now, Fertilome has a product called Killzall, which is glyphosate, which I would recommend you could use in a vegetable garden area or a raised bed, because it's glyphosate, and glyphosate is absorbed through the foliage, so you got to spray it on the foliage of the plant. But then once it goes into the soil, it's inert, which means there's no residual effects, which means it kills the plant that you're trying to combat against. But once it goes into the soil, there's no negative effects in the plants that are surrounding it, the root system or the soil or anything like that. So it's a bit safer to use in that way. So the Killzall from Fertilome is a better product. And yes, you can use it. And, you just don't want to spray any of your, the vegetables or the plants that you want, because it will kill those as well. And again, what we kind of led the show with it. This is our opinion.
Yeah.
There's a lot of bad press when it comes to glyphosate, and specifically because they say, they treat cornfields with it. And you're right, because, Monsanto designed a corn that's resistant to glyphosate so they can spray it over a whole field and kill all the weeds and not kill the corn. That's not great. I don't agree with that. But in your vegetable garden, when you're trying to get rid of Bermuda grass and it's, choking out your tomatoes and your peppers and your other things, it's a good product to use to keep it controlled and cut back and be able to get rid of that. So you can enjoy your vegetables and they'll grow better.
Is the website, is it fertilome.com?
Yes. FERTILOME.
Yep, and it's right there. The logo is on our video right now for those on Facebook Live. So fertilome.com, check it out. And again, as a major sponsor, it does help us here on Garden America. Ken's got a question.
Yeah, tomato blight. So he's saying he still gets blight on his tomatoes every year. And this is an ongoing problem when you kind of, we talk about using the same soil over again. This is one of the biggest things that they tell you why you move
tomato plants especially, right?
From bed to bed, or you let the soil rest between crop planting. So, you planted tomato in it this year, don't plant a tomato in it the next year, kind of a thing.
But then the year after, you can go back to that area?
Yeah, like you've let it rest. So, number one is that, when it comes to tomatoes, there's a lot of resistant varieties. So, it was Kevin, right? Kevin that asked the question?
Ken.
Sorry, Ken. I'm all over the place.
That's okay. A lot of names. But Ken with the question.
Ken, so you could look at the varieties of tomatoes that you're planting. So there are a lot of blight-resistant varieties. So if you just Google blight-resistant tomato plants, there's a whole list that's going to come up, so you can kind of shop from that list, number one. Number two, introduce new soil. And that really comes down to either you take out the old soil in a pot or a raised planter bed, and you introduce new soil into that as well. Allow for great drainage, so that way you're kind of getting rid of the problem. Do not mulch with old plants. We talked about this before with the leaf mulch stuff. Those leaf mulches, the mulches carry diseases from year to year if you allow them. A lot of people will be like, I got my own compost pile. They throw all their old tomato plants, they're all roses, all that stuff in that compost pile. Well, unless your compost pile is getting up over 100 degrees, real hot and killing all the seeds and, bacterias and everything else like that, that compost, all it is a carrier for all those things to grow in your garden the next year. And then you go and spread it, and now you have rust, and you got mildew and black spot, and you got tomato plants volunteering in your garden, and cantaloupe and everything else. So, don't use that in your vegetable garden, because there's not a lot of people out there that can compost to the degree of actually sterilizing their compost.
That's mainly heat, right?
It's all heat.
All heat.
You have to get those temperatures up in that compost pile for it to sterilize everything in there. And professional compost places do a great job of that. And even then, sometimes you get compost out of a bag and you're going to get seeds come up in it. New soil, blight-resistant plants, use organic fertilizers to, encourage better, healthy growth of the plant. Watch your watering. Again, the root rot issue, oversaturation, poor drainage, stuff like that. And that's all you can do. So, I think that those are your steps to making sure you prevent blight the next
Now,
year.
staying with tomatoes, Joyce says that spider mites are getting to her tomatoes.
Yeah.
What do you do for spider mites?
So Fertilome has a product called Triple Action, which is an insecticide, miticide, and fungicide. And that miticide aspect of it is super important because not all insecticides kill mites. So you have to have a product that is specifically listed for mites, like neem oil, insecticidal soaps. Those are not effective against mites. And so, Fertilome Triple Action is what I would recommend that you use because it is effective. So you have to have that mite. Now, a lot of mites also come from dense grown plants. So, lacing out your plant, allowing sunlight, getting airflow, all of that through the plant is the preventative way to prevent mites from happening every year. If you're having that problem, you want to lace out your plants better because that dense growth is where mites come from. But if you already have them, the only way you can get rid of them is to use a miticide. So look for a product with miticide on it.
And that's fertilome.com again.
Yeah.
We can just flood Fertilome with all the Garden America people today.
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, do let them know that you heard about them on Garden America, if there's a place to do so, on the website.
Yeah. Where are we at?
Lenora wants to know what spider mites look like.
Ooh. They look like spiders.
Spiders.
But like almost microscopic spiders. You can't even see them. You really can't even see them. They're like a flea. But a lot of times, the reason why you can identify them is the foliage is very blotchy, and they're on the underside of the leaf, and there's even like a little bit of a webbing that occurs. So aphids are on the top of the leaf, and they're green or black, and you kind of see those.
Now, scales underneath the leaves also as well, isn't it?
On the stems more so.
Right.
Like scale, right? And then mealybug and whitefly are underneath.
Underneath,
But that's
right.
kind of white and cottony. So
I don't see that anymore.
Mealybug or whitefly?
Whitefly.
You have a lot of hibiscus, too, and they love hibiscus.
But I would say going back about 25, 30 years ago,
it was all over?
it was everywhere. And then we talked about it for a long time here on the show about using worm castings, I think, to help combat that.
It's a huge solution for that issue.
Right.
And you're probably seeing those results still.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and worm castings are a great solution for whitefly on your hibiscus and other plants because it works. It's weird, but it does work.
It just works, yeah.
Yeah.
One of those things. Okay, about a minute before the break. Anything else we can cover here quickly?
I think I'm caught up on the questions. During the break, I'll recap because
we'll do a recap.
There was a whole plethora of stuff that came through,
and our next segment is the last segment too.
Yeah, exactly.
So what we're going to do, we'll take a break right now to extend the segment just a little bit. So again, obviously, do stay with us. Those on Biz Talk Radio, Facebook Live. One more segment coming up. Our final commercial break, and then back with our final segment here on Garden America. Okay, Facebook Live, Biz Talk Radio. This is the final segment. We're going to try to get to as many questions, comments as possible, and maybe even recap or make sure that we're covering everybody who is tuned in and taking part this morning with their questions and comments.
Veronica said, so just to recap, kills all can be used on your crabgrass and raised beds. And I say, and I'm going to write back, yes, just don't spray on the plants you want in the bed because that is the one I recommend. Yes. And then I think I'm caught up now. How often... Rochelle asked, how often should you use worm castings to prevent whitefly? Once a year. Really, it's all it needs. Even you can probably go farther than that, meaning like once every 2 years or so.
Do you use it before you see them?
If you do, I mean, like I say, it's really just a benefit. There's no harm. Yeah. So all you really need, let's say a hibiscus bush, 4 feet tall, 4 feet wide. If you wanted to use worm castings on that, you're going to put about 3 cups of worm castings at the base of the plant, water it in, let it soak in. If you were to do that once a year, I'd say you prevent whitefly.
Okay.
If you do it once every 2 years, you're probably still going to get some good results from it. And it really just comes down to the worm castings just stay in the soil. They're an organic material that breaks down into the soil and the roots take it up. So if the plant takes it up quicker, it's going to use it up more, and you're just going to have to apply it more often. but it's kind of always there, and so you're just going to see that the plants are growing well no matter what. And then, there's no harm. Like, you can't overdo it.
Yeah.
If you were to dump the whole bag by accident on top of the soil there,
It's
nothing's going to happen.
That's the key, the name, worm castings.
Yeah.
Worms are good for the soil.
What is castings?
Casting is when they cast the net. Castings is a result of what the worms create, correct?
It's poop.
Well, that's what they create. I was trying to be nice.
You were trying to be nice.
Yeah.
I just going to be blatant.
Yeah, it's worm poop. Worm poop, folks.
Poop. That's a nice. So when you go to the bathroom, you produce some castings.
Castings. Yeah. Hey, who left the castings in the toilet? Dale wants to know when it's time for dormant oil spray.
Oh, so you got to wait till things are fully dormant. So depending on where you're at, that's probably like December, January, February. Because if you apply it too early, you're going to burn everything on there, and it's going to, have some negative effects on the growth. If you apply it too late, you might affect the budded growth that's occurring on the plant as well. So when it's dormant, usually, you're kind of coldest month. You can't go wrong depending on where you're at.
January, February.
Exactly. For
good
us.
months, December, for the most part.
Do you feel we had a mild fall?
You mean so far?
So far?
Yeah, it's been uneventful. It's cooled off.
Yeah.
We've had not rain per se.
Right.
We've had sprinkles, but
Like
we're still gearing up though.
But like one Santa Ana wind, and it wasn't too bad.
No.
Like sometimes we have horrific Santa Ana winds. And
right,
and sometimes
so far not.
Yeah, it's been real mild.
And we're in the second day of November.
Yeah, I think we're kind of almost done with Santa Ana, though. I
hope.
I don't think there's too much more that could, cause that hot, dry wind coming into November and December for us.
So we might have answered Rochelle's question. How often for hibiscus that is 6 feet tall? Well, I guess we're talking about worm casting.
Yeah, so I'd say like once a year.
Once
about
a
3
year.
cups.
Yeah.
3 to 4 cups. You really can't overdo it, but you can underdo it. Meaning, if you don't put enough down there, it's not going to be effective. So.
In other words, don't worry about overdoing it.
Yeah, you can't really overdo it
because you're putting back
soil.
Yeah, exactly.
You're putting soil on top of soil. Yeah.
I wish all products were like that.
Worst case situation is you put it right next to the base of the plant and begin to rot it out. But as long as you stay away from the trunk, you're no worries. It's carefree. I wish I could tell my guys that. I got guys that have worked for me for 10 years that are still burning lawns with fertilizers. I know. Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's like something else that you brought up with, I think, your workers, where they talked about watering and it had to be right at the base of the tree or the plant. And no, it can be around it.
Yeah.
Like especially like in a pot.
Yeah, you don't put it right there.
You're
going to rot it out.
First of all, water and fertilizer, they have a way of knowing where to go and what to do.
And the roots find it.
And exactly. And the plant knows where to go to take it up.
Yeah, exactly. Roots are amazing what they can do.
Well, didn't we talk about, there was an experiment one time where they put water and or fertilizer 6 feet away from a plant, and then under that, the roots and the plant found the water and their fertilizer.
Yeah.
And used it and took it up, and it wasn't necessarily right next to the plant.
No, exactly. And like you said, they'll find it. And also, they talk about that with bulbs and seeds. Like they don't have to be planted straight up and down for it to grow. Like the seed, the bulb will find its way to the surface. Even if it's under the soil, it's going to find its way to the surface.
It's a natural instinct for them to want to survive.
Yeah.
Despite what we do.
We're there's people that can't find a way.
I know, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Today,
Did we get them all answered?
I think we're pretty good.
We've
got about a minute and a half to go.
Do we have one more spot, or are we done?
We're done.
Wait a minute.
Yeah.
John's not even here yet. Did he miss the show?
He did. He's going to be late. By the way, we should mention we're off next week, right?
Oh, yeah. We are off next week. I'll be in beautiful Norco, California, if anybody wants to join me up there.
Whereabouts?
In Norco? Norco. That's the city.
Oh,
not NorCal.
I thought you were doing the NorCal thing.
That'd be fun if it was NorCal. No, I'll be in Norco.
Which is where for those people looking at a map?
Winchester. Have you ever been to Winchester? It's like a West.
Is that where the Winchester house is?
No. That's up in Norco. That's near Sacramento. They're near San Jose. The Winchester Mystery House.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's near San Jose.
Okay.
That is not where Winchester
So
is.
give us a big city or town you're close to.
If you're going north on the 15 from us, you're going to pass through Temecula.
Right.
You're going to pass through Murrieta. You're going to pass through Winchester and Hemet. And then you will be in beautiful Norco, California.
Gotcha. Well, that's going to do it. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and all the little animals who are gathered around the radio and the computer this morning, thank you for tuning in. Again, off next week, we're going to take a break. Go to our YouTube channel. Go to our Facebook page. You can watch previous shows, so on and so forth. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Again, we'll give our best, your best, I should say, to John and to Tigers next week in Norco. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. But the show is not next week, but the week after. Thank you so much. This has been and always will be Garden America. Take care.